So where do we go with what we've got? Where do we go with this idea of rhinoceros have appeared, and we now need to decide what we're doing with the rhinoceros and with the idea that people are turning into rhinoceros and that people are deciding to become rhinoceros. What do we do with all of this? Well, I think that what we're going to be looking at is, again, going to go back to sort of the life and the times of Europe. In the era in which this play is coming out, what we're seeing is that Europe is sort of in a great deal of upheaval. Fascism and extremism have become things that are almost inescapable. Clearly the Soviet Union and Stalinism have left a huge mark on Europe and European society. Clearly, the effects of World War II are still being felt across Europe, and people are dealing with still the idea that anybody could have done the horrible things that were done during the Second World War. The Holocaust, Stalin, imprisoning and killing his own people. All of these things are sort of a big deal. Big unanswered questions in the air. And I think one of the things that Ionesco is doing is he is asking us to figure out, how do we respond? How would we respond if we were confronted with the same thing? I think Ionesco sees this play as a play that is going to be read by people in the future. I think that he definitely means it for now meaning when he's writing it, right? That people need to confront the menaces that are currently in Europe, and that simply seeing them and understanding that they're there is not enough, that there needs to be a response. But I think he also intends for us 20, 30, 40, 50 years into the future to look at our societies, to look at the things that are building, that are becoming extreme, that are becoming different, and to decide how we are going to confront these things. Are these acceptable things that are happening, or are we no longer going to accept them because we're starting to realize that we don't like what's going on, that we need to pay attention to what's going on? What I'd like your group to look at is this question of, when we look at our characters, Jean, Berenger, how do we see ourselves in each of these characters? Do we see ourselves dealing with absurd situations in the way that Berenger is confronting them, or in the way that Jean is confronting them? Do we see ourselves as a Gene Wilder? Do we see ourselves as a Zero Mostel? When we are confronting life, when life confronts us, what is our response? Do we see a little of ourselves in both characters? Do we see ourselves primarily as one or the other? And what are we going to do, right, with a situation like this? And not just politically, but also, I think, in other ways in life, right? I mean, certainly there's a big political message here. Absolutely, it's indisputable. You have to understand that this is sort of a political play, and it's a response to political situations in Europe. But there are certainly other ways of doing this, right? That, as you are confronted with age, as you are confronted with responsibility, as you're confronted with a lot of other things, how do we react to life's absurd situations in general? It doesn't have to be a major ideology shift. It can simply be something that is maybe an unexpected. This play kind of gives us an idea that, when the absurd happens, when those moments of, here I am, here's where I thought I was going to be, here's the chasm in between, how do I respond to those situations? I think that's going to be something that is going to be an important thing to consider. In addition, we have our rough drafts coming up. At this point in time, you've given me your expanded outlines. I would like you to continue moving with those, and I would like to have those before Thanksgiving. I would actually like to have those the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. That way I can sort of evaluate them and try to respond by the end of the Thanksgiving break period, if at all possible, right? I would like the majority of the draft to be done. What I mean by the majority is, if we are talking about somewhere between 10 and 12 pages, I would like somewhere between 6 and 7 completely done. And I would like for there to be as little sort of, here's where I'm going to put in X, here's where I'm going to put in Y. I would like you to do as much as you can to have as much of that paper done, and at least to a point where you feel comfortable saying that you're fairly certain about what you have in here, and all you would be looking to do is refine some things. My job is going to be to sort of take a look and say, here is where I think you need to refine things. Here's where I think you need to add or subtract. Here's where I think you need to be careful. Very much like with the expanded outline, but in a much more detailed way, right? In the expanded outlines, I tried to point out places where I thought maybe this would be something you might want to look at. Here's where I think, you're doing a good job. Here's where I think you're going to have some, real good things. Here's where I think you might have some trouble. I want to be able to see where you've taken those, right, suggestions and gone. So, again, I'm really hoping, and I would really like to see the work on making sure that, as you're proofreading it, as you're going through it, that you're turning in the best possible draft that you can. If you want to consider this to be almost a final, I would love that, right? It would be great if when you turn this in at Thanksgiving, you feel like when I come back to this, when I look at this paper again, once I get some feedback, that I won't need to do very much, right? Or that any revisions that I need to do, I feel are going to be very small, because that's my goal, is to be able to look at them, give you feedback, and to let you know you don't have much to do. But if you do have things to take care of, that you have clear directions on this, right? I want to work with you to make sure that this is a good paper. What I do not want to see is a paper that you're turning in. If I'm giving you feedback, you're simply saying it's good enough, I'm going to turn it in this way when I'm done. Again, everything up to this point is primarily participation, right? And full credit, because you are turning in the piece as you're turning in the pieces as they go. And right now I'm really looking at this as you're working up to a final project. If you get it to this point and then do nothing else with it, you're not going to get the best grade that you could possibly get. If you do turn in something that is I'm able to work with, that we can correct, or that is very good and that needs very little work, then you're already going to know, right? Any work that you do is going to give you that really solid grade for this, right? This course is all about making sure that you get the best grade possible, because you've done the work up to this point. We've worked together and gotten right to this point, and now, right, you are in good shape, and you're going to feel good about what you've turned in. So, help me help you, right? And turn those drafts in before Thanksgiving. You will see an assignment pop up. If you want to turn it in anytime between now and the 21st of November, which is right before Thanksgiving, I am going to start, as soon as I start getting things turned in, I'm going to start grading, or I'm going to start evaluating, right? And then, so the earlier you get it in, the quicker you get your feedback, and the easier it's going to be for you to turn in a final product. So, there you go. I will see you all again next week, and we will finish up with Rhinoceros and start looking towards our final paper, our final section on Jean Genet. So, see you then.